edge reviews. Sometimes it's just nice to see three blades that you've been thinking about in comparison to each other and how they work with just general use. And you'll notice general use nowadays basically just means how does it work on wood. That's like the thing that everybody uses. Maybe some edge retention videos on cardboard and stuff like that, but wood is basically the intermediate. So what I do is I grab a piece of maple, which is a real intermediate wood around here, and this is just some 1.5 inch maple. It's kind of spalted a little bit, so it's even a little bit softer, but it's a good test of working with a knife, if a knife is comfortable, how well the edge holds up over time, and there's factors like that. I did want to also use today the Cooligans Sierra saw and just see what I think of this. I've had this for, I don't know, a couple years now, and I still haven't decided if I think this thing is completely worthless or if it has a niche. The blades that I'm going to be comparing and using today are the Condor Bushlore Mini. I put that into some Kydex. I've had that for years now. Some minor modifications, just put a patina on it, and then kind of put a patina on it, and then I rounded out this part of the handle a little bit, things like that. But that's a knife. Oh yeah, I put some jimping on there. It was just for the fire steel. That's a knife that has been used so much, and it's stuck around. You know, I've gotten rid of my tops and my Ontarios and a whole lot of blades. I've gotten rid of a bunch of stuff because I just want to use knives. I don't want to keep everything that I don't use. And these are some ones that have held out and lasted. Here's another one, the Pendleton Mini Hunter, and this is another one that was super quality steel. Actually, I was real happy with the steel. It's hard to sharpen because it is kind of a thick little knife, but when it takes an edge, it takes a really nice shaving edge. It's a hard steel. I can appreciate this knife. I use this mostly for skinning and stuff like that, real small things like squirrels and rabbits, and I really like this blade because of how sharp it stays. And then the Cold Steel Mini Tac Skinner, and this one hasn't done as much skinning, but it has done a lot of outdoors work, and I was just surprised for how thin of a blade that this thing is. It's very, very sharp. It's oscillate. It's really easy to sharpen, and it just stays pretty sharp even after I run it through, I don't know, a couple months of use without sharpening, which is not a good idea, but just stays really sharp. And I appreciate the sheath a little more than some of the other ones. This Cold Steel was VG10, by the way, and this is 1075 with a Condor. What I thought I would do is grab this piece of 1.5 inch spalted maple. I'll probably just saw this in half, and then we'll see maybe splitting it down, quartering it, using it for some notches and stuff, how well these neck knives work. After watching some of the SHOT Show footage from 2017, I noticed there's something you didn't see a whole lot of, and that was neck knives. Not a lot of neck knives. I think people are starting to realize that a lot of the pocket folders can do just as much as a neck knife can do. And a neck knife sometimes is just, it's intrusive, depending on the way you wear it and if you're good with using them or not. You can sometimes get a full handhold on a folding knife, but you can't get it the same handhold on a neck knife. You know, three fingers is about pushing it with some neck knives, and it's just not super useful. Now, speaking of not being super useful, this saw, I don't know. I've used a lot of folding saws. In fact, I've used a lot of Sierra saws, gone through a lot of them, and the full size, like 6 or 7 inches, I actually didn't think too poorly of them until I compared them against like a Corona saw, and crap, they suck. They just really suck compared. So sawing through that right there, I wasn't real supported. I guess it did okay. It was okay, not my favorite. But if you were going to be processing some wood, if you couldn't get down to dry wood and this is all you had was a limb like this, quartering this up is kind of a challenge. You can see there's not a lot of extra blade left over. Maybe I can get this in the camera. There's not a lot hanging out on this side to grab hold of. But it did it. So that was a relatively short blade, processing some 1.5 inch maple, and it wasn't too hard. If I was not on camera somewhere else, I probably could have got through that a little easier. Let's try the Mini-bushlore. This one has so much more belly than that Pendleton does, and it's about the same blade length. If you just compare, they're kind of close of actual cutting surface. But the Condor Bushlore is just a little longer. It's about the same thickness, but it's got that scanty, so I don't know if it's going to do different or not. Sometimes I get nervous with pounded scanties through anything because they just bite in too deep into the wood, and I don't think they wedge very well. It's definitely a little more to grab onto on the other side. And there is a decent little knot that it's going to have to work through. There we go. So pretty similar, about the same as the Pendleton. One thing I will say about this Mini-bushlore is it can take a razor here, pop an edge, but it seems like it's harder than its big brother to get that edge on here. I don't know what it is. Could just be this one that I have. I'm sure it is. When these things are made in bulk in El Salvador, every knife is kind of a character. You have to understand that. It's going to have its own quirks and heat treat personality and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Maybe I'll quarter down one more piece with a saw. The thing about this is it's so thin, it just bends. I don't know if you can see, it just bends easily. I don't know, kind of sucks. It's nice when it's thin in certain kinds of woods, like just trimming little limbs off an actual tree. But when you're trying to quarter up something that's any thicker than the blade, I don't know. I think if I had my actual Corona with me right now, probably would have been through the wood. That is 4 or 5 times the size of what I'm using right now, though, overall. And the weight. Yeah, it's just getting stuck in that wood, and so I don't know, I think I'm prepared to say these Sierra saws, the minis, kind of get this in frame, thumbs down, they kind of suck. All right. All right, next is the Mini Tac Skinner. And this one does have basically a full flat grind over the length of the blade. And I've never had too much problem processing wood with this. It's not a real comfortable knife for this kind of thing. Whereas the other knives, some of that vibration gets transferred into the handle, but it's got like a rubber handle or the wood handle, and it's not as noticeable. This one just has a G10 handle, very thin, and all of that vibration, you're going to be feeling it 100%. There we go. So I did the chore, and it's definitely got the longer blade in comparison. That's like a ½ inch longer, and it's just got so much belly. This is a decent skidding knife, actually, with the edge that it takes and just the shape of it. It's got this little like micro tanto. I don't know if you can see it right up here. And that works really well for just kind of poking into a piece of meat or fur from an animal and then getting underneath and just kind of gliding the edge. up underneath, especially like squirrels and rabbits, you know, just little game. This is a really decent one, and it'll delimb just fine. I use it for batoning and chopping limbs off. It's done just fine. No chips in the blade or anything like that. Surprisingly, I thought for sure with some bigger limbs that this would chip out, but no, the Osate is decent. Don't care too much for that handle. It's super lightweight, and if you aren't going to use it a lot, it's easy to wash off. There's some pros to it, but the con is it's just not comfortable for working with it for a long time. If I were to start to remove material from this, right away my fingers are plowing into the palm of my hand because it's so thin and it's so small. And it's very lightweight. You hardly notice the thing in your hand, and it's got that choil, which is great, but your hand doesn't have a lot to grab onto. And when I'm digging into the wood, getting some better chunks out of the wood, it's only about, I don't know, 5 minutes of doing what I'm doing there, and your hand is actually sore from it. You know, the G10 is pretty aggressive, and that's just not something your hand likes. I don't care if you're a tough guy or not, that your hand just doesn't like rough textures for fine woodworking. And I think this fits better as a general use knife. Just box opening, skinning, using it for 10-20 minutes at a time at the most. That's probably where this excels. It kind of remains my Skinner, and every once in a while I'll EDC this. Put a little clip on it, and it'll just sit in my waistband a little bit, and it's easy to get a shirt over it, and it's not too hard to get it out and grab it the right way. I've had some other cold steels where you pull it out and your fingers practically are on the blade, just the design of it. But this one, the reason I've kept it is because you naturally grab it with 2 fingers back here, and when you pull it out, the next one has got a secure position. So I like that one. Probably not going to be the master of the woods in any way. The Pendleton, I was surprised with this one. The handle gives it a little credit because this edge is not exactly a woodworking edge. It's not real detail work oriented, but the handle is so comfortable in comparison that it allows me to use it more, and I don't think I'm going to put up as much of a fuss about it. Let's see. It definitely can dig in deeper than a lot of knives of comparison. Like the SE Kudu and a lot of those other blades that people are so fond of, and I just honestly don't know why people are fond of those blades, because for a little bit more weight and a little bit more length, this will do triple the amount of work, and it just doesn't kill your hand. You only are going to begin, I have real medium to large size hands, and comfortably, probably 3 fingers. But that last finger can kind of hang off the end, kind of secures it, locks it down. This little bit of a hilt here, or a guard I should say, that kind of helps your finger not slide forward at all. And it's just so rubbery that you're not going to have trouble with this knife. It is a full tang knife. It comes all the way past here. There's a little lanyard hole. And the laminate, this is a, what is it again, VG1? Yeah, VG1 stainless. It just slips through wood so well, and kind of working right along here makes a really nice clean cut. It's kind of a learned behavior for feathering a knife like this. I'm so used to Scandies at the moment that I probably can't produce a real nice feather stick with this blade, especially a spalted wood. It's so soft. So it can still make some fine curls, no problem. Easily would be able to hit that with a fire steel. I'm going to do the fire steel example in a second here, a little bit of a test. And next is the Condor Bushlore, and this blade is obviously a woodworking blade. That's the way it's designed. It's got the Scandi grind, but what I've done with it is to actually allow it to get a little bit dull, and then I reprofiled it at one point so it's got a stronger edge. It's not going to bite in as deep as a traditional Scandi like a Mora. The angle is a little different, but it's a little stronger edge too, and I just kind of prefer that since this edge I don't know. Every time I put a hair popping edge on it, it doesn't last very long anyways. And so I'll just keep a medium edge on it and be content with it. Even so, compared to the other blades, probably in 2 passes I can do just as much removal of material. So that was 2 passes along this piece of wood. And I know it's impossible to gauge this when you're just watching it in a video, but my 2 passes in this piece of wood were just about deeper than the passes I had in the other wood. This thing is just made for it. And so I guess if you were to decide you wanted a neck knife or you wanted a small blade, you'd have to decide if it's okay to have a Scandi, or if you're going to be plowing into some harder materials. There are things that will dent this blade up. You know, hard plastics and stuff like that. This edge probably won't hold up to it. That's just the truth. Slice is nice, but it doesn't slice as nice as this cold steel Mini-Tac. This is the slicer out of the bunch. But this doesn't skin overall as well, in my opinion, as this mini Pendleton. This can just do a lot more, and it does take a really, really nice edge. It stays very sharp. It's a very hard steel. If I were to go for handles at this point in my review, if I was going just based off handles, I think the Bushlore has got the better handle. It's just a little more ergonomic. It's a little fatter, and it just meets the hand a little better. If I was going for EDC, that's a pretty tough one. I think just general EDC, I would go with the Skinner, the Mini-Tac Skinner. It's really light, it's really thin, and I've got a natural way to carry it on my side. As far as kind of general outdoors use, if I'm not working a whole lot with wood, I just need something to cut stuff occasionally, skin stuff occasionally, work with a little bit of wood, strike a fire steel. This might be my choice overall. I don't sharpen knives out in the woods a whole bunch. I don't know anybody who realistically does that. I might hit with a ceramic rod from time to time for fun, but if I'm actually going for a long time out in the woods, several days maybe, I think this is the one that I'm going to take with, just for that edge holding capability, the handle, the overall use. This one probably wins. But let's look at some fire steels real quick and see what sends better sparks. All these have 90-degree spines because I've modified them. None of them really came adequate to me for throwing sparks. So I got an old fire steel here. I gotta get the old material off. So it's a 5/16 steel, 1075 steel, not real hard. Notice I had a little bit of trouble, and I always do. That's why I had to put some teeth into this spine, because the blade doesn't really throw sparks. It's got sparks to it, and enough to start a fire, actually. It's not something I complain about too much, but it's not as good. The Mini Pendleton, this has got a coating. It's had a squared spine now, and it throws a really big spark together. Not really a shower of sparks, but acceptable. I'd say it's just a hair better and more consistent than the Bushlore is for me right now. And the Skinner, which has a really nice square spine right now, Oz-8 steel, has the most consistent spark, I think, out of all these blades. And I'd probably say this is the easiest to spark with out of all these. But that's been Edge Reviews. Hopefully you found this somehow helpful or entertaining or anything like that. If you liked it, you can like, share, subscribe. I really appreciate those subscriptions nowadays. Kind of tells me what I should make more of. And let me know if there's something you thought about these, or if you had questions about these blades, or maybe you think there's a blade that is more worthy than these blades and should be in this review. Let me know what you think about that. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. This is Edge Reviews.